bumper to bumper, regardless of the speed.
Come on, get going, get going. Get out of my way.
Unfortunately, Mr. F doesn't realize he's driving a potential engine of destruction more powerful than the largest battering ram ever to breach a castle wall. To explain, let us pause a moment, return him to his car, and see some freeway facts of life. Let's say Mr. F is traveling 60 miles per hour. A figure equal to about half the number of miles per hour added to that number gives the speed in feet per second. Thus, at 60 miles per hour, 90 feet is approximately the distance Mr. F's car travels in just 1 second. On a football field, it would move about 30 yards every second and go from goal line to goal line in just over 3 seconds. But now let's go down to the field for a little demonstration in which Mr. F himself is the subject. As he watches the scoreboard, a signal suddenly flashes. Now let's see what happens inside Mr. F. First, his eyes receive the signal and transmit it to certain centers in his brain. There it is identified, analyzed, calculated, and computed. And an action decision may be handed down.
Stop! Hit the brake!
The message goes out to the legs and feet, and finally the brakes are applied. If we run through it again with a stopwatch, we find all this takes about 1 second.
Stop! Hit the brake!
Now, if Mr. F crosses the goal line at 60 miles per hour just as a stop signal flashes, he will travel a minimum of 30 yards before he touches his brakes. And even with good brakes and dry pavement, he will still cover another 70 yards to the opposite goal before finally stopping. So, Mr. F was actually preceded by a sort of danger zone made up of his reaction distance plus his braking distance. Now, imagine he's on the freeway, a bit behind and to one side of a car identical to his. Let's go to slow motion and suppose that for some reason, the leading driver decides to stop and applies his brakes here. Mr. F reacts as soon as he sees the flashing taillight ahead, but he cannot apply his brakes until here, past the point where the first driver began to stop. The braking distances are the same, and Mr. F comes to a halt this much farther along. Obviously, had Mr. F been in the same lane, there would have been a jarring rear-end collision. And possibly even others. When behind another car on the freeway, drop back as speed increases to allow for reaction distance. Under good conditions, the usual rule of thumb is 1 car length for every 10 miles per hour. 60 miles per hour, 6 car lengths. When road conditions are poor, make it a bit more. Now, back to Fidgetus. Does he drop back as speed increases? No. He's still bumper chasing. Is he alert to movements several cars ahead of him, anticipating possible emergencies? No. He's left himself no margin of safety because he... watch it! Not now! Look out for the car ahead! It's stopping! Even if the impact speed is down to 30 miles per hour, the result for Mr. F could be like driving off the roof of a 3-story building. Last but not least, we have the annoying type, called Neglectorus Maximus, the inattentive driver. Often Mr. N is simply hypnotized by the drone of traffic and carried off to dreamland.
Oh, 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 dum, lo-dee, lo-do-do-dee-dum.
Then again, he may suddenly decide that the freeway is an ideal place to study his math. You may see him enjoying a second cup of coffee, or even getting in a quick shave while driving. Of course, his favorite pastime is conversation, especially with someone in the back seat.
Yeah, just picked her up this morning. Flat out, she'll put down anything on the road. Oh,
Neglectorous can be a problem to others, even when not directly involved, because he's usually a rubbernecker. And if some mishap slows traffic on one side of the freeway, he will jam the other side simply by being curious. And Mr. N is particularly careless regarding signs and direction. Thus, he is usually almost past his exit when he notices it, has to change lanes quickly to make it, and there's the same old chain reaction. Finally, Mr. N often neglects his speedometer and forgets he is moving at freeway speeds as he re-enters the world of surface streets.
oh, hush up.
There are other freeway problems too, and they often start right here, off the freeway. Of course, there is a certain type of motorist usually involved. There he is now. A nice enough fellow, but the type who never takes care of things. He never seems to learn. So let's call him Stupidicus Ultimus.
Ha! What a worrywart. Look at the old fuss budget.
He is often rather contemptuous of anyone who takes such simple precautions as walking around the car for a look at the tires. Mr. S hasn't looked at his tires since he bought the car, so of course they've been run ragged. He hasn't had the motor or brakes checked either. If the car runs, he simply drives it off without a thought. Stupidicus just doesn't realize that on the freeway the demands on every part of his car are much greater. A slick, threadbare tire is usually the first thing to go.
Uh-oh, there goes my tire.
Of course, this can cause Stupidicus to lose control of his car. But if it doesn't, that worn-out tire suddenly becomes very precious to him, and he will actually stop quickly in a traffic lane. Of course, this is the worst thing he could possibly do. On the freeway, seemingly minor things, unusual little noises or vibrations, should not be ignored. A carelessly tightened wheel working loose, a rising temperature gauge, a rattling hood latch slightly damaged in a parking mishap can mean real trouble at freeway speeds.
Uh-oh, there goes my tire.
Stupidicus is the only one to blame for this predicament, but he has other ways of causing himself trouble too. For example, the way he puts things in his car. See how carelessly he piles them in the back seat, never thinking that in a sudden stop,
Oh, ouch! Oh, ouch!
every one can become a dangerous projectile, threatening his life and limbs. But even worse is the way he loads a trailer. He He usually piles too much on and then ties